The hinge had been crooked for weeks, one of those tiny home things I kept meaning to fix but never got around to. That morning, I finally did. Old hoodie, black coffee cooling by the sink, the sound of the drill whining as I adjusted the screws. My hands smelled faintly like metal and lemon oil. Then my phone pinged. Callie. She was in Bali, living out her so-called rebirth at a retreat that looked more like a boutique resort. Last I heard, it was all about healing the inner child and reclaiming feminine energy. I hadn't expected her to write. We weren't texting much. I'd been giving her space. That's what she said she needed. The screen lit up, a single line tossed off like a weather update. Ran into my ex, small world. Be a good little husband and relax. No explanation, no follow-up. Just that sentence with that emoji like it was a joke between old friends. I stood there, thumb still hovering above the screen, my mouth dry. Outside, late fall had dimmed the sky to this quiet, pewter blue. Linda, my neighbor, was in her backyard lighting candles. She had a bottle of wine in one hand, 2 glasses on the table, though I knew she lived alone. Probably a ritual, or maybe she hoped for company. Something about the soft flicker of those candles made the whole scene feel gentler than what was in my chest. I walked out the side door, still holding the screwdriver. She looked up, surprised, but not startled. Hey, you have an extra chair? She smiled. I always do. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. I didn't tell Linda about the message, not that night. We just sat there while the light faded out of the sky. She asked about the cabinet and I said it was fixed. She poured wine and I drank it. We didn't say much. I liked that. The silence between us felt like a room I could finally breathe in. Later, when I went back inside, Callie had sent another message, a photo this time. Her, half-lit in candlelight, clinking glasses with someone just out of frame. Guess who? Ha ha. Life's wild. I didn't reply. I set my phone face down and finished washing the dishes. The thing about a hinge is, if it's crooked long enough, the whole cabinet door sags. You stop noticing until one day it doesn't close at all. That was us. Me, the guy fixing things too late. Her, the door that already swung open. I didn't answer her, not the photo, not the follow-up, not even the late-night string of dots when she tried to see if I was still reading. I woke early the next morning and drove to the hardware store, bought a new deadbolt and a keypad lock, both matte black, the kind you could change the code on from your phone. Quietly, methodically, I unscrewed the old brass one, set it on the porch, and fit the new one into place. It clicked shut like it belonged there more than she ever did. Her closet was half full, mostly the statement pieces she thought showed off her brand. Long linen cardigans, 2 wide-brimmed hats, a bright yellow suitcase she bought after watching some influencer's Bali vlog. I folded everything into boxes, taped them shut, labeled them with her name in black marker, even though there was no one to confuse them with anymore. The paperwork was already done. I'd met with a notary the week before she left, after she canceled our 3rd couples session in a row. She said she needed time to breathe without labels. I gave her exactly that. The envelope waited on the counter, signed and stamped, next to a single house key and the yellow ceramic coffee mug she'd never once rinsed out. That evening, I lit the patio lights. Linda brought over a second wine glass without asking. Is it your anniversary or something? She joked, setting the glass down. In a way, I said, something's ending. She didn't ask what. She didn't need to. We watched the light shift across the backyard, slow and golden. The neighbor's dog barked once, then quieted. The air smelled like pine needles and grilling meat from 2 doors down. I was present for all of it in a way I hadn't been in years. At 12:08 a.m., her name flashed across my phone. Landed safe, it read. Then, 10 minutes later, you okay? You're quiet. I turned the phone off. Slept deeply, no dreams. When morning came, I left early, drove north with no real plan except to be somewhere else. I'd already canceled her access to the garage app, to the utilities account, to the Spotify family plan she never contributed to. By the time she stepped off her return flight, with sand still between her toes and a phone full of messages she expected praise for, she didn't know it yet, but there was nothing left to return to. No welcome home, no fight, no note, just a code she no longer knew, and a house that had already exhaled her. She stayed gone long after her ticket said she'd be home. I watched her new life unfold in curated squares and filtered light, sunlight on clifftop yoga mats, eggs Benedict beside bottomless mimosas, wide smiles with tan strangers whose names never appeared in the tags. Every other day, a new post. Learning to let go, shedding old skin. When you stop watering dead plants, you bloom. Mutual friends tapped hearts like they were being supportive. I saw the names, people who'd eaten at our table, who knew the full story, or at least enough of it to stay neutral. Instead, they chose likes and emojis. One even commented, "So proud of you, girl, living your truth." She told a version of the story that made her brave, said I was too rigid, that I couldn't adapt, didn't support her growth. Never mind the years I spent refinancing loans to pay off her grad school, her yoga training, her boutique startup that folded in less than a year. Never mind the quiet nights I sat up reviewing her web copy because she wanted it to sound like someone who actually knew what fulfillment meant. But I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself in the comments or send late-night corrections to anyone who reposted her updates. Instead, I drove to Colorado and took a house-sitting job for a couple headed to Portugal, an old cabin with creaky steps and a wraparound porch. The plumbing was moody, and the west fence leaned so far you'd think it was bowing to the wind. I fixed the fence first, dug new holes, mixed concrete in a rusted wheelbarrow, reset every post. My hands ached at night, the good kind of ache that reminded you something had been done, not talked about. The dog, a black mutt named Roscoe, followed me around like I was someone worth trusting. I read books I never had time for when I was busy being supportive. I learned how to reseal window frames, how to split logs with a single clean stroke. I went days without saying more than 5 words out loud, and I liked it. Meanwhile, she posted a video of herself dancing barefoot on a rooftop at sunset, a glass of wine in one hand, a man's hand visible just at the edge of the frame. The caption read, "Your cage wasn't golden, it was just quiet." And still, I didn't respond, because cages don't have open doors, and the quiet, that was never the problem. The problem was what she did with it. The message came on a Tuesday evening, just after I'd finished stacking the last of the firewood. Cold air rolled in early at that altitude, and the smell of cedar and sap clung to my sleeves. I wiped my hands on my jeans and checked my phone. "Hope we can talk someday. I didn't mean to hurt you." No preamble, no hey or even my name, like a stone tossed into a frozen lake, expecting it to ripple. I locked the screen without reading it twice. The next one came 3 weeks later. My birthday. "Happy birthday, wherever you are." That one sat longer in my notifications. She'd always remembered birthdays, made a show of it. Balloons, photo collages, handwritten cards with the same "You're my rock" lines year after year. But this one felt stripped, flat, like she'd scrolled past the date on Facebook and sent it out of habit or guilt. I didn't open it. Then came the long one. A full message thread on Messenger. Paragraphs. Apologies. Phrases like, "I didn't realize how much you were carrying and I was in a selfish place." It pinged through one morning as I sipped black coffee on the porch, watching frost lift off the fields in quiet steam. I read the preview, just the first few lines, and let it go. Marked as delivered, nothing more. After that, she started circling. Karen, a mutual friend from her yoga circle, messaged me out of the blue. Just a, "Hey stranger, how are you holding up?" I didn't reply. 2 days later, Mark, an old co-worker of mine who'd once flirted with Callie when he thought I wasn't paying attention, liked one of my old tagged photos from 3 years back, the one at Lake Crescent where Callie had stood barefoot in the water while I held her boots and jacket. I knew what this was. Digital sonar. Ping the depths and wait to see what floats up. But I'd already done the work. I'd archived the memories, scrubbed my accounts, logged out and deleted apps. My last post was 6 months old. A blurry sunrise over the tree line. No location, no tags, no traces. She wanted a door back in, even just a crack. But I'd removed the hinges, and out here in these mountains, silence wasn't avoidance, it was intention. She could shout all she wanted into the canyon, but echoes don't always return. Her flight had a 10-hour layover in Seattle. She could have booked a spa day or stayed at the airport lounge with herbal tea and noise-canceling headphones, but something pulled her toward the old neighborhood. Curiosity, maybe, or a need to see if the door still remembered her hand. She rented a black hybrid and drove there with a smoothie in the cup holder, hair pulled into a tight, clean bun. The streets felt narrower than she remembered, the trees taller, like the whole block had grown up without her. She turned onto our street, no, not our anymore, and slowed as the house came into view. The siding was no longer blue. Now it was a warm gray with white trim, shutters gone. The lawn looked better. Someone had reseeded the patch by the porch where she used to set down groceries when the key stuck. There was a tricycle tipped on its side near the walkway, a pair of rubber boots too small for her own feet resting by the new welcome mat. She parked, but didn't get out right away. The new owners had added flower boxes under the windows. She stared at them for a long time, like they were foreign decorations in a museum of her own life. When she finally stepped out, she didn't go to the door, just walked the perimeter of the property, slow, measured, hands in her jacket pockets, like maybe the air itself might offer recognition. It didn't. She tried the coffee shop next, the one we used to go to every other Sunday, where she used to lean on the counter and ask if the barista could please use oat milk this time, like I asked. But it was gone. In its place, a vape shop with blacked-out windows and neon lettering. She stood there, staring at the unfamiliar shelves, as a man with gauged ears asked if she needed help. She shook her head and stepped back out. There was one last stop. She walked up the hill toward the neighbor's yard, the one with the rose bushes that bloomed thick into June. Mr. Langley, mid-70s, widowed, always pruning something. Today, it was the hydrangeas. His shears clicked methodically, a rhythm he didn't break even as she approached. "Hi," she said, offering a small wave. "Do you remember me? Callie?" He looked up, blinked once, then gave a polite smile. The kind you give strangers you don't want to offend. She tried again. "I used to live right there, with Grant." Recognition flickered in the edge of his expression. Not warmth, just a quiet dot connecting. "Ah, right." He nodded, looking back down at the plant. "Your husband? Haven't seen him since he left. Didn't leave much behind." The words hung there, unbothered, factual. She nodded like she understood, though her hands were tightening in her coat pockets. "Okay," she said softly. He didn't ask questions. She turned back toward the driveway and stood there for longer than she meant to, watching the light shift on windows that no longer framed her life. The house had moved on. The street had moved on. Even the silence was occupied now. She told herself it wasn't obsession, just curiosity, closure, a kind of psychological bookkeeping, to tally the damage and file it away. That's what she told her therapist anyway. But late one night, glass of Tempranillo half full, her cursor hovered over the confirm payment button for a digital trace firm she'd found through a private forum. Discreet, reputable, NDA standard. She clicked, paid the retainer. They worked in silence, as promised. No updates unless necessary. Weeks passed. The anticipation crept in sideways, glancing at her phone more often, refreshing her email like it might blink and reveal him. Eventually, a report came through. Sparse, precise. His last known activity linked to a P.O. box in Colorado. No forwarding address, no traceable purchases beyond local ATM withdrawals, small amounts, always in cash. Careful, intentional. One bank noted deposits under a single name, Grant. No surname, no digital trail. Another breadcrumb, a hiking permit issued at a ranger station near a town she'd never heard of. Then a co-op store receipt for woodworking tools, a basic axe, sandpaper, manual sharpener, purchased under a first name only, signed with a scrawl that matched his old signature closely enough. That night she stared at the map, zoomed in on terrain, on forests and creeks and ridgelines. Her eyes blurred, but her heart didn't move. She booked a cabin 2 towns over. Modest, off-season pricing. 2 nights, 1 bed, a kitchenette, no cell service. She packed 2 coats, not knowing which one he might remember. To anyone else, she said it was a spontaneous recharge, time to re-center. But when she slid her suitcase into the rental trunk and locked the hatch, she paused. This wasn't about peace of mind. It wasn't even about him. It was about the version of herself she couldn't seem to shake. The one still holding a phone in Bali, texting a line that detonated everything. She told herself, if she saw him now, maybe it would all make more sense. Maybe he'd be thinner or bitter or undone, and maybe then, just maybe, she could forgive herself. But she hadn't asked the one question that mattered. What if he'd already forgiven her? By forgetting, she existed. The snow had started as flurries just past noon, soft and tentative, brushing the windshield as she curved around the mountain road. By the time she pulled into the gravel lot outside the mechanic's shop, it was steady, dusting rooftops, blurring outlines, softening edges she'd hoped to keep sharp. She sat in the car for a moment longer, fingers clenched around the steering wheel, staring at the small building with its uneven metal sign and hand-painted hours. This wasn't what she pictured. No zen cabin tucked in a forest, no poetic porch swing creaking in the wind, just a squat garage with wood smoke curling from a chimney in back and an old canoe lashed to a beat-up pickup out front. Then she saw him. He was kneeling beside the truck, tying a thick rope around the bow of the canoe while a teenage boy stood nearby, watching intently. His beard was longer, flecked with gray at the chin. His jacket was waxed canvas, shoulders dusted with snow. When he stood and tugged the rope tight, she caught the quiet economy of his movements. No flare, no rush. Just steady hands doing what needed to be done. She stepped out of the car. Grant. He looked up slowly, the kind of slow that comes from deep focus or deep reluctance. His breath fogged the air between them. Callie. That was it. No question, no exclamation, no emotion she could name. Just her name, spoken like a fact. Not soft, not harsh, not anything she could climb into. The boy glanced at her, then back at him, sensing the static. Grant nodded toward the cab of the truck, and the kid climbed in without a word. The engine coughed to life and backed out, snow crunching under the tires. She stood still as he walked past her to a snow shovel leaning by the door. His boots left clear prints beside hers. She turned slightly to follow his movement but didn't step closer. "You're hard to find," she said, the words brittle in the air. He didn't answer, just pushed the shovel down, scraped a clean line through the snow, turned, and did it again. She wrapped her coat tighter. "I didn't expect you to be here. I was nearby, thought maybe—" "You weren't nearby," he said flatly. "You drove here." That stopped her. It wasn't cruel, just correct. The kind of accuracy that stripped away the safety of excuses. He didn't look at her, just kept clearing the path in slow, practiced strokes, as if she were wind or falling branches, something that might pass if he kept moving. "This was never how I imagined seeing you again," she said quietly. Grant paused, rested on the shovel for a moment. Then he looked at her, really looked, and whatever she had hoped to see, melancholy, regret, longing, it wasn't there. "You imagined this," he said. "I didn't." Then he turned and stepped inside the shop, the bell above the door giving a single dull chime as it closed behind him. She stood there as the snow thickened. Each flake landed like a small silence. She didn't know how long she stayed, only that the cold found her fingers, her jaw, the hollow behind her ribs. This wasn't absence, it was something worse. This was being unneeded, unmissed. Out here in a town with no memories, she was just another tourist in the wrong season. The bell over the workshop door gave another dull chime as she stepped in, the warmth from the space closing around her like a memory she didn't belong to anymore. It smelled like cedar shavings and diesel, familiar in the way a childhood home is once it's been sold to strangers. Tools hung in neat rows. A half-finished chair sat on a workbench, joints sanded smooth, clamps holding it in place like careful hands. I didn't look up right away, just brushed sawdust from my palms and reached for a small tin of varnish. "I've been trying to reach you," she said, voice soft but stretched tight. "I know," I said, unscrewing the lid. "You never even read them?" "I saw the previews." She let that hang. I dipped a cloth into the varnish, wiped it carefully along the edge of the chair's armrest, slow, even strokes. "I didn't think you'd disappear." I set the cloth down, finally turning to face her. The snow clung to her shoulders in small wet patches. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, eyes wider than usual, like she was seeing something she hadn't accounted for. You told me to relax, I said. I did. She laughed, brittle and quick. That wasn't what I meant. I nodded once. And that wasn't the husband I became. Silence stretched between us like a line pulled taut. She looked down, tracing her fingers along a rack of chisels without touching them. I thought we'd talk. I thought if I saw you, it would feel like it used to. It doesn't. She flinched, barely, then squared her shoulders like someone still trying to pass a test they already failed. You seem different. I am. What changed? I paused, then walked over to the wood stove in the corner, opened the door, tossed in a split log. The fire stirred, glowed, took hold. Silence, I said. It teaches you who you're talking to when you're alone. She moved closer, cautiously. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. I was just lost. I looked at her. Then you should have stopped running before you crossed the line. She blinked fast, like dust had gotten in her eyes. I came here thinking maybe we could find something again. Maybe it's not too late. I didn't answer, just watched the fire catch deeper. She stepped closer. Don't you miss me? Even a little? I turned, met her gaze without warmth, without spite, just something quieter, older. I missed who I thought you were, not who you became. The words didn't hit hard. They didn't have to. They just settled. She stepped back, looked around one last time as if hoping the shop would offer her something I couldn't, but everything here had purpose, a place, a reason, and none of it included her anymore. She leaned against the edge of the workbench like it might steady her, arms folded tight across her chest. The wood creaked softly beneath her shift and weight. I stayed near the stove, one hand resting on the metal handle, watching the flames move through pine like they had somewhere to be. Can we just talk? She asked, voice quieter now, almost a whisper. There's no we, Callie. I didn't say it harshly, just clearly, like naming the end of a season. She looked down, nodding slowly, jaw tightening as if bracing for something that wouldn't come. No shouting, no breakdown, just the sound of snow tapping against the windows and the quiet breath of a workshop that had already outgrown her. I thought I'd feel more satisfied by now, she said. All that freedom, all that space. But it just feels like I lost something and I don't even know what I was chasing. I opened a drawer near the sink, pulled out a paper towel, and walked over. Handed it to her without a word. She took it with fingers trembling more than she meant them to. Dotted the corners of her eyes, sniffed once. Not the dramatic kind of crying, the tired kind, the kind that seeps in after pretending you're fine for too long. I do, I said quietly. Know what you were chasing? She looked up, waited. You were chasing a feeling that didn't need roots, that didn't owe anyone patience, that made you feel like the center of something without having to stay still. Her eyes dropped again. The words didn't sting. They just exposed something she'd been trying to outrun. I stopped chasing it, I added. The moment you texted me that photo, the one with the wine and the half-visible arm, you were already gone before you hit send. She nodded, slow and heavy, like someone sinking into truth. Then she reached out, not far, just enough to close the space between us if I let her. Fingers open, waiting. But I stepped back, not with anger, not even sadness. Just the calm certainty of a man who had done his grieving in silence and built a new rhythm from the pieces she left scattered. I'm not angry, I said, but I've had my peace. That stopped her more than any outburst would have. Her hand lowered, her mouth opened, then closed again, like the next line was stuck somewhere behind the weight of too many months and too few apologies that came when they still mattered. I walked past her, picked up the cloth I'd left on the bench, and returned to sanding the backrest of the chair, each movement steady, measured, honest. Behind me I heard her shift, heard the paper towel crumple faintly in her grip. She lingered a few seconds longer, but warmth is a choice, and I'd already chosen where mine lived now. The next morning, the receptionist at the co-op handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in tight, slanted script. No stamp, No cinder, just placed there, likely with a strained smile and a quiet, "He'll know." I didn't open it right away. Set it beside my thermos and finished restocking the storage racks with road salt and winter gloves. Took 2 calls about propane tanks. Laughed once with Marvin about someone trying to barter firewood for tire chains. Then I warmed up my leftover chili in the back room and sat by the window while the snow fell soft and steady outside. Only then did I slit the envelope open with the edge of a putty knife. Inside was a single sheet, no date, no signature, just 9 words in her familiar looping handwriting. "I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that." No elaboration, no plea, just a white flag with no country. I stared at it for a few moments, the edges curling slightly from the warmth in the room. Then I folded it once, clean, down the center, and walked back to the workshop stove. The fire had burned low, but steady. I opened the cast iron door, laid the letter in gently, and watched it catch. The paper browned, then curled, then disappeared, curling in on itself like it had never meant to last. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. Outside, the wind moved in low swirls, brushing snow off the roof in slow sheaves. No drama, no collapse, just the soundless shift of weight from one side of the season to another. She wanted to be heard, to be forgiven, but forgiveness isn't a performance, and peace doesn't require a reply. The flame took the last of the ash, and I finished my lunch,